Welcome to our Changemakers series. We're kicking it off with Eric Jimenez and Justin McLean. This series is focused on interactive workshops that spotlight student-centered classrooms and culture-responsive teaching. If you're interested in a professional development certificate afterwards, there will be a QR code and a link shared at the end of the session. And so we'll mail you a certificate that shows that you were here tonight. Like I said, we have Eric Jimenez and Justin McLean joining us for their session titled Classroom Connections, Top 10 Ways to Make Equity Actionable. Eric is an experienced educator and co-host of the SCORE podcast, who passionately explores topics of equity, CRT, and culture-responsive strategies. Through his work, he empowers teachers to create classrooms where every student feels valued and engaged. Eric's insights are rooted in years of experience and deep commitment to actionable change. Justin is a dynamic educator and also a co-host of the SCORE podcast, which delves into the practical aspects of equity in music education. He's dedicated to helping teachers translate theory into practice, ensuring their classrooms are responsive and inclusive for all students. Justin focuses on culturally relevant teaching, bringing knowledge and passion to his work. This workshop will last about 25 minutes. Then we'll have some time afterwards for a Q&A with the facilitators about their work and about some of our programs here at Longy if you're interested. And so without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing here and turn it over to Eric and Justin.
Awesome. All right. All right, folks. Okay, so we have the QR code up there, but at the end we'll drop the link tree as well. Just one thing we love to do with everyone, if you are in what I call sometimes the unspoken Facebook groups, right? If you're a part of any of those, if you notice, Justin and I are not usually posting in those, and we actually don't post and promote our podcast on there. And it's intentional because we want to organically let people know about our podcast, whether that be you meet us at a conference, at an MEA, professional development, and then that's when we ask, let's build community, even if it's digitally. So if you get an opportunity, follow us on our social medias, but we would love to connect with you individually as well. And if you haven't done so already and you came in, we would love to know where you're from. And so shout out to, Gerardo, you're from El Salvador. All right. So that's awesome. One thing that I am getting more familiar with is, Houston is obviously one of the most diverse cities in our country. And specifically where we're at, the southwest side of Houston has probably the most concentration of Salvadoreños. And so I have to go to the southwest side of Houston to get me a good pupusa, man. So it's one of those where I have to make that happen. So if you haven't done that, please do that. We gotta shout out our guy right now, Dr. Gunther, for allowing us this opportunity to be with you today. So we don't take these opportunities lightly. We truly walk in them with integrity and with appreciation, because we know when we were undergrad or we were in high school, we didn't have folks like us or look like us presenting or seeing. So we take that responsibility on full on. And so I want to give you a little bit of insight of who we are real quick. I love putting up a picture of my family because I wouldn't be who I am if it wasn't for them. Currently, I'm serving as an educational support manager for Con Selmer. Con Selmer makes the instruments. If you know Bach, King, Armstrong, Ludwig, Musser, we have several. We're the Selmer Paris, etc. So I get an opportunity to serve the Southwest U.S., West U.S., and the country of Mexico. I have over 14 years of experience, specifically as a music educator. One of those years was as an administrator. I was an assistant principal. I was aspiring at the time to become a fine arts director here in the state of Texas, but I went back to being a band director. But I'm also a proud HBCU alumnus, historically Black College University, and a former faculty member at Prairie View University. I'm currently my doctoral music education student at the University of Houston with an arts leadership minor. And as you can see, I got a picture of my son Anthony and Melanie. Anthony is actually playing a baseball game right now down the street with his little league team, and I'm getting the play-by-play on the side on my other screen. So it's pretty cool to see that. I make sure that I say this: I'm a proud son of immigrants, and I do that intentionally because unfortunately our country has demonized that word. And I want to hopefully provide you a great product, a great example of my parents and the sacrifices and all they did for me. And a little side note about me: I was a DJ for 15 years, so a little bit of that voice on our podcast comes out, and I learned how to do that through DJing. So Justin.
All right, so I get the wonderful opportunity to partner with Eric, and we do this podcast, but this stems from us just being really great friends. And it started long before we became directors together. It started while we were both students at Prairie View A&M University. And from there, I was able to teach in HISD as a middle school director and a high school director along with Eric. And I ended my tenure as a time in the band hall in Fort Bend ISD as the percussion director and assistant director of bands at Hightower High School and Lake Olympia Middle School. That exit wasn't the easiest thing, but it was something that I felt there were some other opportunities opening. And so now I currently stand in a position as a student pastor in our local church. And so the cool thing about that is a lot of my students in the student ministry are musicians. And so they are currently entering Bandtober. Before I jumped on here, I was talking to one of my students who's a flute, plays flute in her high school band. And she was like, we got another competition this week. They keep saying something about Bandtober. And I was like, you're in the thick of it, ma'am. And may the force be with you. Right. And so even though I'm not there every day, because of the partnership I have with Eric and some other colleagues, I get an opportunity to still thrive in that world in seasonal moments. Outside of working in the local church, I'm in seminary trying to work through a master's degree in theological training. That's 13 years of being a band director from the middle school and high school sector that I am still using a lot of that culture and that life and that job training where I am right now. As you can see, my dear friend Eric has 2 children. By God's grace, I have 4. So these kids are much bigger now. And so if you are a person that prays, just lift my name if you get a chance. Just lift my name. There are some grades that are starting, and I'm no longer in the classroom, so I'm trying to figure out what has happened. But no, these kids, they're amazing. They're currently 10, 9, 5, and 4. And so me and my beautiful wife, B, we get the joy of pouring into our children. And then my introduction to music, and you'll learn about this later in the talk that we're having. But I had a great opportunity while I was in the classroom to still thrive in the world of being an artist, of writing songs, producing music, playing at a church, and getting that other aspect of what introduced me to music, which helped build a path in the band world. And so I have dibbled and dabbled in those things.
Check him out. He's on Spotify. So one of the things that I ask everyone to do when we do these presentations is to be vulnerable with us. Admittedly, I used to think that vulnerability meant weakness. And since then, I've read a lot of the work of Dr. Brene Brown from the University of Houston, and has helped me understand the fact that if we become vulnerable, we have a greater chance of learning from each other. So we're going to do that with you. So we would ask you to do the same with us. And so we're going to try to talk about 10 ways that you can make equity actionable. And I have to say that the reason this podcast exists was because my first stint in pursuing my doctorate, I started as I was being told to, right? To read critically, to think critically. So then when I would read these research papers about the community that I was serving, or about kids like me or teachers like me, I questioned. I was like, do they get this information? Do they get this? Do they even have time to read something like this? And so I thought, why don't we take some of that research and make it digestible? Why don't we put it into a podcast form? And Justin and I had been pushed by several of our friends. They're like, man, y'all got the gift of gab. Y'all should record a podcast. And then we would always talk about stuff in our office when we were working together. And they're like, y'all should really record a podcast. And it took us a whole 18 months to finally put it out. But 2019 was the year we launched it. And we're here now. We're close to 100,000 listens. And we're really proud of the work that we've been able to do with this. And so now I want you to think of ways. The first one, right, is to think how can you specifically find out your student's background, and that's unique, right? Because I have to share this quick story. I don't usually go to resorts in Mexico. That's something that my wife usually and I typically pick a Pueblo Mágico. It's a magic town that's a list of the Office of Tourism is promoting. But I went last year, and I got asked while we were at the pool, where are you from? Because they heard me speak English and Spanish. And I was like, oh, I'm from Houston. No. Where are you really from? Texas. And they're like, what? And I'm like, ask me what you want to ask me. What's my ethnicity? What's my nationality? And I was like, and sometimes it does get frustrating, right? Because I'm repeatedly telling them, and they're like, well, you must hate us. Who's us? Americans. I was like, again, I'm an American. But now, doing those things, because Justin is really good at this. He's an exemplar of being a person that not from said community and worked with a majority Latino population and truly was interested in his kids, truly interested in the kids that he was serving. So some of the strategies that I want you to think about is at the beginning of the school year, how can I create a survey to collect some data? And don't do it in a way of saying demographical, click this. Truly get some information back. And what I mean by that is, could you get their soundscape or the life soundtrack? And one question you could ask is, if I went to a major family event, and for example, for me, it would be a wedding, a quinceañera, a graduation. What are the top 5 songs that I would for sure hear at any of those events, and have them list them, and then you get and then if you have an opportunity, now you have data. Now you have information that informs you, that says you could have an informal conversation with said student. Hey, tell me more about those wapangos you talked about. What is that? Can you play an example for me? And then even though you already might know what that is, or you did your research beforehand, and it's just entertaining that conversation. Justin did that all the time. It was literally at the threshold of the door while kids were putting up their instruments. Hey, talk to me about that. So use this information to inform you, but tailor your lessons to now you get also materials to celebrate your students. And then host classroom discussions that celebrate, and keyword, celebrate their students' identities and their experiences. Because it can't be one of those like, why do y'all have a quinceañera? Why do y'all spend so much money? It can't be that type of conversation. It has to be, oh wow, I got invited. What should I expect? What should I wear? Right? Like, be interested in those moments. And I have videos, by the way, of Justin dancing wapangos at a quinceañera.
Okay, we talked about that. The fact that you still have those is problematic.
So the second one is culturally responsive and sustainable curriculum. And now we're in a space of, if you're not doing this yet, I would ask that you start tomorrow and start informing yourself of that. And what I mean by that is we're past the name on the upper right hand corner. We can't put a black person and program them on Black History Month and say check. I can't put a Latino and say Hispanic Heritage Month and check. Or play Suavemente from Elvis Crespo on Cinco de Mayo and think, yeah, I'm playing Spanish music. He's Puerto Rican, by the way. And so although we dance to that music, you should be authentic in what you're trying to represent. And so be doing so, not only just incorporate in programming, incorporate those experiences. And it might be, well, there are no culture bearers that can do this, or there's nobody with a degree that can do this. Who says you need a degree to come in and bring in culture bearers to say, well, we don't have mariachi education yet, but there's a local mariachi that gigs all the time. Maybe I can bring them in to do a professional development for us and walk us through some of those things. So think of ways of how you can now expand that as to community-based projects that connect the curriculum to the student's home experience. And this will also give you an opportunity to highlight historical and contemporary figures that are from those underrepresented communities. We're now in a space that we have to do this. We have to find ways to diversify our assessment methods. We have to move beyond the traditional tests and quizzes and start thinking creatively of how can I create a project? Can I create a performance? Can I create a portfolio? Can I assess an experience? Can I give them an opportunity to do those things? Because you should be able to provide multiple avenues. This goes into equity. Well, I need you to submit a recording of yourself by this date at this time. What you don't know is their Wi-Fi went out. What you don't know is that every device is being used in the house right now. What you don't know, like all the things that a child might not be willing to share with you just yet. So you have to be mindful of those things to say, you know what, you can't do it at home. I'll stay 10 minutes later after school, or come during lunch, come before school. Create those access points at the school that creates that opportunity for them to do that. And then at the end, use those formative assessments that allow for reflection and growth throughout the learning process. So you gotta check yourself. You have to be able to say, okay, they didn't really get this content, or they didn't really understand the purpose or the objective of this. I have to now be reflective of that and go back and reteach this material in a different way, and think of different ways to deliver it, but maybe different strategies, different resources. You have to be flexible in your seating and learning environments. And what I mean by that, I am a coffee shop nut. Like, I love coffee shops, the aesthetics, the smells, the coffee itself, right? I throw on noise canceling headphones and I go to work. I don't know what it is about it, but I'll knock out work that I would have been putting off for months and I'll get it done like in 2 hours. My wife, on the other hand, yeah, she would hate that. She doesn't work in that space. But the thing that we have is that privilege of choosing our environment where our kids don't. The thing that they do have, though, is that you control your environment. And I'm talking about your specific classroom. So now by doing that, you want to think of how you can create a classroom with an environment that offers different seating arrangements and accommodates different learning styles. And this is where you start getting to know your kids individually, your students individually, to think, I'm going to encourage you. What's the best place for you to, Mister, can I go over here? Can I sit in this space? That starts giving them the autonomy of choosing their best way and how to encourage learning. My son this morning, although he was trying to get out of going to school and he was just really tired because of his little league game yesterday. And he's like, Dad, it's because everybody talks and I get distracted and I can't focus on my work. I know he's not lying because that is true, but he was just trying to get out of work. Now, my son in first grade doesn't have that autonomy right now. But as they start growing older and getting more interested in how they learn, you are the facilitator of that process. You are the person that can start identifying it. And that's why I love my son's teacher right now, because she says, I already know how he is. I know what to do to push his button to get his work done. Instead of he's not getting his work done because he's out of his chair. He's not getting his work done because he's talking too much. These opportunities of the teacher understanding students situationally and individually will help you inform you how you can create that learning environment that fosters participation and encourages them to want to do more. This is my bread and butter. This is something that I learned I learned as a student. I couldn't put it to words what my directors and my teachers were doing. It was my second year teaching. I went to the Texas Bandmasters Association conference, and I got to see a Latino band director. He was working at a middle school that he went to and was sixth in honor band here in the state of Texas. So I'm over here thinking like lower income school, check. Latino band director, check. Like all the things that I was like, I've never seen this. I've never heard this. So I'm going straight to him, beeline. I'm going to find out what he's doing. And then he just pretty much talked about the Stephen Covey. One of his the highly successful habits is people's emotional accounts. That he would see the students, wearing the same clothes sometimes. Now it gives you an opportunity to say, I can't financially put it in their bank account, but I can deposit into their emotional account. And that's ways of saying, informally, I'm spending time getting to know my students. Hey, I saw you talking to John out in the hallway. Were you dating Mike last week? Mr. Jimenez. I'm a jokester. I'm one of those guys like, I'm just saying, I'm not going to say anything, but I just, those little deposits, right? But also standing at the threshold at a volleyball game, seeing the kids play, and then talking about it the next day and saying, I'm so glad you're in music because you should not be doing volleyball. That's just, not in your wheelhouse. But, and they would be like, and get all upset. I'm like, I'm just playing with you. I'm proud of you. Keep going. That was my personality coming out. That was me. And that at the end of the day, with these suggestions, you at the end of the day have to make it yours. So try to think of creating mentorship opportunities, not only from the teacher to the student, but from the student to the teacher. Create this learning environment that's co-creating, but hold regular sessions. And it doesn't have to be, I have my meeting with you today. I need to find out how you're doing. All right. It has to be one of those of organic. How you doing? I see you're kind of tired today. Is everything okay? Anything I can help you with? Deposit. Consistently think ways of how to make intentional relationship building.
Now, as we move into these next 5 points, what I really want you to get in your mind is the word shift. I think a lot in education, especially within music, we have to begin to shift the way we think about things that we've been exposed to and the things that we have been developed in. So when we talk about this idea of reflective practice, one of the things that helped me early on, me and Eric would sit at our desk when we taught middle school, and during our lunchtime and things of that nature, we would reflect on, okay, how did first period go? How did our beginner class go? And a lot of those times we talked about what the students are not doing or where we want to get them to go. It wasn't until there was a moment early on in my first year of teaching where I just wasn't fully connecting and getting the objectives grasped fully. And it wasn't until Eric said, you're going to have to change the way that you think as a musician and start to think as a student. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, you naturally have had a lot of success playing your instrument because that's been a very high part of your ability, that you are very talented. When you're teaching, that is not necessarily the same access point. And so you can't teach from a place that says, hey, you should be able to figure this out because these two things match, and then you do this and you do the things, right? And it wasn't until I started to sit back and say, let me reflect on how I communicated, how I planned out properly or did not plan out properly, that then affects the teaching moment. It affects the moment of actually connecting to the information and doing the information. And so when I say the word shift, what does it look like for us to say, when I look back over my lesson plan or after a rehearsal or after a performance or after a class period, am I solely looking at the students, or am I also looking at what am I saying to the students? Is the access point of why they can't get said objective or technique or skill set because I may not be clear or I have not done enough legwork at the beginning before we started this? And sometimes that can be hard, right? Because reflective practice, likes to put the onus on the product, not the person that's producing it. And so I think what has helped me, what continues to help me, is for me to say, yes, these things may be true, but this is a both and. This is, how did this thing become true? Because I lacked a level of clarity. There was some vagueness. There was a lack of really diving deep into something and glossing over it, because in the teaching moment, I didn't do the legwork before, the week before, the night before, or the score study before that period, or whatever the case may be. I think reflective practice helps the students feel seen, and to know this. Watch this. Eric talked about this intentional relationship building. It lets the students know that we're both on this journey of learning and getting better. It's not just one person and this group of kids. It's both and. It's that our director is trying to get better from learning how to better instruct, our music teachers learning better how to keep us engaged by engaging more with things that are going to help in the teaching moment. That reflective practice then helps us go into this next phase. It's something that we hear. It's a buzzword: student-centered learning. We say that all the time. We hear it. It's all of these fancy, I like to call educational language or jargon. But at what point do we make the students the center of the learning? If they are the true outcome, if we want to see our students thrive, not only in our certain pedagogical training, but also just as people, then they have to be at the center. Student-centered learning looks like this. It looks like, for me, asking my students, what form of communication works better in this teaching moment? Does this help you better? Or when I'm doing this, which makes me feel comfortable, does that make you feel uncomfortable? And does it make you not want to learn? Now, I want to forewarn you, you're not going to hear what's going to massage your ego. You're going to hear something that's going to make you go back to the drawing board. But if we're sending our students back to the drawing board, if we're telling our students, hey, I want you to show up to after school choir and I need you to be prepared to sing these songs for this upcoming performance, even though they might have felt that they did really well during that class time, what does it mean more for the leader, the adult in the room, to then say, hey guys, I feel like I could do this better. What works for you? You're going to see hands go up. And then that gives you a smorgasbord of ways to then pull these things. And I'm telling you now, when you make the students the center of your learning, you become the center of their level of success. You become the access point to really proving and pushing to whatever goal seems unreachable for those fifth grade choir students, those beginner band students, that orchestra group. Now, whatever you're speaking through, because they know that you've made those advances to say, how can I help my third chair trombonist? How can I help my tenor student? How can I help the young girl that is navigating through some home life issues that's affecting how she's hearing things? How am I making that the center of their learning so that they would want to actually come in and learn? It's reflecting on where we need to go. It's reflecting on how am I not being the best that I can be or the clearest that I can be, and then taking that and saying, what is needed? How can I be at the center of what you need so we can all move to this destination together, right? Now, I love this next thing because collaborative spaces of learning really gives the onus to the teacher, right? And if you know anything about band directors in Texas, the band director is the sheriff. You don't come in there if they don't want you in there. You don't do anything in that room, and don't let the band director have autonomy over the orchestra room too, because then it's like, hey, why are you in here? Well, I was trying to get out, right? So now this space that is for learning, that is for ensembles, that is for community, actually becomes a place that, yes, I enjoy making music here, but I don't feel at home here. So here's what I did. In the middle school that I had, we did have some level of expectations and standards, right? But we also created a space where in the morning, when the door opened, band students are able to come in. This is not a time for me to say, I'm going to teach you. This is your time to clear your mind off the bus. This is your time to play your instrument, to practice something, to prepare for an upcoming performance or test or technique we're working on. But I also said, I don't want this to just be about you. I want to open this door for you, but I also want you to open yourself up to other students. So I would tell my seventh and eighth graders, you need to buddy down. Eighth grader to a seventh grader to a sixth grader. So what happened in that moment? Well, when I would come in from making copies or catch, getting kids out of the hallway, I would see this space of unified teaching. I'd see the eighth grader talking to the sixth grader in their essential elements book because they remember that technique and they remember that exercise that they had to learn. I see the seventh grader working with another eighth grader on their UIL piece. And watch this, not just the music, but the expectation. I would walk in and see the eighth grader say, okay, when you're sitting there, you want to go from this position. When his hands go up, all of these things that, because I said this is your space to learn, not only at your pace, but to also help other people. Yes, I have a moment when I'm on that bandstand. Yes, I have a moment when I'm teaching, walking the aisles, but this space becomes a shared space to collaborate, not just director to students, but student to student, ensemble to ensemble, jazz student to solo and ensemble kid, region kid to a kid that's working on their solo in the band. Whatever the case may be, those kids knew that, they understood it, and watch this, they begin to take care of that space on their own because they understood this is a space that we get to collaborate with Mr. McLean to feel leadership, to feel ownership, because we matter. This isn't just a place that says, I run this, you do as I say, not as I do. Those things may have some level of truth there, but there's also space for you to develop, right? And so it's those collaborative learning spaces that I feel like these things are like dominoes. It's one hits another and they all lay down and it creates an open space. Because as we move to number 9, this is real big. It hinges upon what Eric talks about in intentional relationships. If we see our students as not just objects to build our career, if we see our students not as just objects to build a resume for the next job, then it's going to force us to walk and deal with the social emotional needs that kids walk in with every day. That though I tell my students, and me and Eric have said this before, we want you to leave those things at the door. Not that they can't come in here, but we don't want them to overtake your mind as we're building something in here. But with that ask, there's also a level of grace that goes forth to say, there are needs and there are spots that we have to fill as educators. That a student may come in and their home life may not be what it needs to be to come into that classroom and to focus 24/7. What does that mean for us? How are we creating and meeting needs that may not fix the problem, but it can provide a band-aid to help them see something different in that moment? That's the weight that's on our shoulders, right? That is the energy that we have to meet our kids with, because our students don't understand why we're so passionate about music. They like us, they appreciate the energy and the environment that they come into, but it's not until we access what pushes them. It's not until they're getting picked up late after school. And yes, you could make a big thing about, hey, rehearsal's over at 5, it's 5:40. Or that's a moment to say, hey, how's everything going? Hey, what's life going on? What's happening in life? Hey, I noticed you usually get picked up about 5:40. Your parents work here and therefore, oh, I'm just kind of going. Wow. Now when that child stays, now you have an opportunity for a door to be open. That door opens and they expose different things from their lives and needs that they have. And then when they sit in that chair in that room, when they come to that rehearsal, when they sit on that bus to that trip, you have connected with them in a way that says, this is not just a give to get. This is a give both ways. And I'm getting something from the student, but the student is getting something from me as well. And I think, again, the word is shift. A lot of times we're looking to receive. I'm a teacher, I'm up here on the hill, you're down in the valley. I think when we address those social emotional needs as young men, young women, as they're walking through life, it lets us go down into the valley with them. And it really gives a clear picture of what education is. It's a person that has a set of information, but does not sacrifice the person just for the learning without also pouring into what they need in their lives. That's a hard thing to get because we all have these boxes that we have to check. We have these things. And in Texas, we have quite a few things that if you don't do these things, you may not be, classified as one that is effective, right? But it's those needs that then help with the family and community engagement. We had a standing jazz band performance at our local library, which was literally right up the street. It brought out the community, which brought out people who didn't even know that this was happening. Jazz education was happening at our middle school, which ultimately said, hey, we'd love to give funds. Hey, I got extra instruments. Hey, I know this person, that person. But it also allows families to be engaged with something that sometimes they may feel a type of way that they cannot see their kid. They cannot be there, but to provide spaces in the community that says you can be here, it's accessible, and watch this, to engage that family. I also want to make sure that it's time friendly for where you are. And we're saying, hey, we're welcoming everybody out. But family engagement means that I also want to put myself in an uncomfortable position. As Eric said, I'm Black. I don't know if you could see that on this screen here, but I worked in a majority Latino community when I first started. Huge language barrier, huge culture barrier. And so there were a lot of students whose parents wanted to ask questions. We would have band parent meetings. I would send emails, all of these things. But there was a level of trepidation and fear because the language is a barrier. Well, what I want to meet your mom. I want to meet your parents. I want to meet your little brother and sister. Who cares that there may be a lack of language? How can I still be a person that puts myself in an uncomfortable position to hear you, to know you? And that went a long way, man. It went a long way, so much so that a lot of those engagements that I had then are still showing up now. I still have great relationship with many of the parents that I have, students that are in college now, whose parents still call me and say, "Hey, can I invite you to a college graduation? Hey, you made a great impact on our family. Thank you for being patient." And these are things that go a long way because learning is a lifelong process. And how do we affect the future of someone's learning in the reality of where they are in that moment?
All right, folks. I know we're running short on time, but I want to give you a couple exemplars real quick of what is happening on social media. I was actually discouraged as a band kid to play in mariachi, and so now you have it on social media. You can literally get pedagogical instruction and things and resources through social media. So one of the first one is a mariachi trumpet player. A traditionally rote teaching ensemble that has the notation up there. But I will tell you, if you're interested in that ensemble, that genre, that style, it is treated like a lead sheet. Like in jazz, you got to pick up the nuance by listening to it. The second is Justin and I are firm believers that every marching band should not play Land of a Thousand Dances anymore. That you should move on.
Cut it out.
Right. So. A simple little ditty like that, right? Like repeat it, the crowd knows it, the community knows it. It gets everybody feeling better instead of just, "Hey baby." I didn't mention that one, but throw that one out too. But the next one I want to show you is a past guest of ours, Daisy Zambrano. I want to go and listen to that episode. She is a mariachi director now, but she plays in a conjunto and is actually known probably more for her work in conjunto. This is two different conjuntos playing together that they met through social media. They're going to switch now. So I went to the next group of sisters, and they're in a completely different conjunto in California. And they met through social media because a lot of them shared their recordings.
1, 2. Why are you talking?
I made sure I kept that part in there because that's real instruction right there. That's something I would have said. We must recognize, challenge, question, and take advantage of the opportunities for music, teaching, and learning available to us in a digitally networked society, because otherwise we risk irrelevancy. If I want to leave you with what was missing for you, and for me, I am one of the biggest advocates of mariachi education now because I was prevented or discouraged from doing that. And so because of that, I want to ask you the second question. What's missing for your students? You are in that position of power to be able to make that decision, to give them that access to those things. And then ultimately, how can we connect our music stands to our school, the music stands to their headphones, and create those bridges now instead of thinking you have to live in this dichotomy of sorts of saying you keep that music over there, you do this music here. And last but not least, when you do it consistently, and even if it's in small increments. Don't overwhelm yourself. Don't think you have to buy the trajes and do the whole thing and like I have to do it right. No, scale it up. Create that opportunity.
Yeah, the word is family. The word is the thought is, how do we bring what is natural to our students into their experience? I told you earlier, being an artist and things of those natures, but my earliest experience with music was in church. And so because church was my training ground, I always tried to connect what I was doing in the local band hall to that. And I wanted to do that for my students. I wanted them to know that your home artistic life, whatever that may be, can be also experienced here at this school in this program. Yes, we may not be playing the exact music, but those same tools that help you engage with that style and give you that energy, bring that here. And it was a badge of honor to know what your home life was. It is something that I take very seriously, to know my people, to know your students, not a task, not a check in the box, not a first day directive from your admin team, but it's a real thing that is not a one-time thing, but it's a consistent thing, that we are shifting the way that we think about how we connect, which is what helps us connect with music and create experiences that are memorable.
So we're not here because of we came up with all this. Somebody left a lasting legacy on our hearts and our lives and on our minds, and we have to give credit to all of our former educators, all our former teachers that put us in this space, that gave us the opportunity. And so because of that, we hope that you become that person that leaves those footprints on somebody's life. We would love to connect with you. I'm going to drop the link. The left QR code is my direct contact information if you need anything Consummer related. The right QR code is everything. I'll drop the link as well. And we just want to say thank you for hanging out with us.
Thank you so much, Eric and Justin. I'm gonna, Zoom round of applause for both of them. Thank you. I'm gonna steal back the slideshow here for a moment. And I'm gonna kind of zoom through this a little bit, pun intended, because I know that we're hitting that that time limit and people got things to do on a Wednesday night. But I just want to thank Eric and Justin again. We'll have some time for questions. But if anybody does need to leave, I just want to get through the get through the QR codes so that you can get your PD certificates. If you're interested in any more of our programs at Longy, please do get in touch with one of us. Aaron Zaffini is the director of teacher ed. I'm the assistant director. Michael Gutierrez, our administrative manager, and that's Eric and Justin's emails up there on the screen again if you need their contact information. If you're interested in another Changemakers session, we have Stefano Marchesi coming, who is a wonderful teaching artist in the Boston area, talking about empowering student engagement and facilitation through music making. So that QR code to register is up there. And shameless plugs for some of our programs here at Longy, and follow us on Instagram if you're interested. That bottom left QR code is a quick form for you to fill out. If you would like a certificate for this session. I'm also going to drop that information in the chat right now in case that's more convenient for anybody. That was a whole bunch of links. So, and yeah, I'm gonna stop the recording right now, but happy to stay on for a little while. And if anybody has any questions for Eric or Justin right now.